Hello friends, Dr. Renee Tucker here. Today's video podcast is entitled 3 Things I Wish I Knew Before Vet School and Why Those Things Will Help You. Okay, let's get started. First, when I was in vet school, the first thing I wish I had known ahead of time was that every year that we started, and there's 4 years of vet school, but every year we started, each and every professor would say, hey, 50% of what we're going to teach you is wrong, but we don't know which 50%. And at the time, I thought, isn't that just beautiful and so wonderful that we realize that we're going to learn more things, do more experiences and experiments, and we're going to grow and we're going to change what we know to what was better and what's best for the horse. That's what I first thought. And then what happened was I learned that they never tell us which 50% is wrong. In fact, we would have some wise guys in our class, you know who you are, Rick, who would say, okay, so what you're saying is I only have to get 50% on the test, right? And everyone would laugh because that's hilarious, Rick, okay? But no, they would tell us 50% of what you're going to learn is wrong. We don't know what 50%. Well, let me tell you my backstory. Okay, when I first got accepted into vet school, I was very excited. And I was sharing with my dad, who knows nothing about horses, about laminitis and how terrible, how dreadful, how painful laminitis is for the horses. And he was like, wow, this is so terrible. I really hope you can be the one to discover what's the cause of laminitis. What's going on with these horses? And I thought, oh, yeah, well, I didn't think I'd be the one to do that. And I'm not. But I did put that in the back of my mind. So when I went through vet school, I literally went to the library with my spare time and I got piles of books and, pardon me, okay, just making sure it's working. I would get piles of books in the veterinary school library, and I'd research all the laminitis studies. And I look back through decades of what happened, because today's studies are very often based on last year's studies because we're trying to learn and build upon what other people are doing. But what if 50% of that is wrong? And the thing is, no one ever tells you, oh, by the way, that study from 1992, that one was wrong, and here's why. There's none of that. We just assume it's all correct, even though they tell us every year in every class in vet school that half of it's wrong, when we don't know what part is wrong. You may say, well, that is weird, Renee, but how is that helpful to me? Well, hold on there. I'm going to get to why these things are helpful, and it's going to be good. All right. The second thing that I wish I had known is that all these studies are based upon a healthy population. For example, when you start a study, you'll read them and the first part explains the details of the study. Generally, they'll start with, we studied a population of 200 healthy males aged 25 to 35. That's for a human study, okay? And the same thing goes for the veterinary studies. They say, well, we started with 20 horses, blah, 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 and they generally assume the horses are healthy. But guys, they're not. They're just not. I don't think many of us know what a healthy horse looks like. No, we don't. Do we have horses, generally speaking, in our studies that are being fed only hay for their fiber, mixed meadow grass hay with no rye and no alfalfa? No, we don't. They're all out on pasture for the most part. Some of them are on hay, that's cool, but are they also on a track system that is keeping them moving 15 to 20 miles a day? Probably not. Let me know if anyone knows of a study of this type of horse. Not to mention they're on all the supplements and everything that we think is supposed to be healthy, but it turns out it's not healthy. My point being, so many of these studies that I was sitting there in the library trying to learn from, those are all flawed because they're based on starting with a healthy population of horses, which we don't actually have. Okay. And really, this is really going to have a good part at the end. Okay. So the third thing in vet school is that we hyper focus on individual body parts or tissues or organs. For example, we have foot specialists, or we have eye specialists, ophthalmologists, or we have skin specialists like dermatology. So let's use dermatology for an example. I learned after vet school that the skin, besides being a protection for the body, the skin is also a secondary filtering organ for the liver, which means that when the liver is super busy, that's backed up, got a long line of cars behind, it will send some things it's trying to cleanse from the body out the skin. So we have all of these, well, not that many, but a lot of horses have rain rots, and they have or rain scald, it's also called. They have scratches and fly allergies, it's called, all these type of things. And if you're a dermatologist, what you do is you take a little biopsy of the skin, because you study the skin and you know what skin is supposed to look like. And you take that skin biopsy and you bring it to the lab and you find out what's going on. Well, interestingly, what I learned in dermatology class was it's all fun and games, but then it comes down to two things. Either it's a bit cancerous and you need to deal with it that route, or you give antibiotics and steroids, or antifungals if you think it's rain rot. Part of me started thinking in vet school, should we even do these biopsies? Because all we ever do is antibiotics and steroids. Now, I did not say that out loud. Let me tell you that. I just had that thought in my head. I thought, well, it's good to know. It's certainly useful information. But we're still doing the same thing. Because, as I said, I didn't learn in vet school. It was after, when I'm studying alternative medicines, that the liver has a secondary backup lieutenant, if you will, in the form of the skin. So not necessarily lumps and bumps, but when you have this type of overall itchiness and the rain rots that just don't clear up. I've seen rain rot and there's just been no rain for months, and rain scald. It's like, what's going on here? It makes sense when they're living in rain and they're walking around in mud that they'd have these scratches issues, right? But a lot of times they don't. So a lot of times these skin conditions have to do with the liver and they have to do with the immune system. But if you're hyper focused on only the skin, like for example, a dermatologist, then you never think of that. You're just thinking about helping just the skin, which means antibiotics and steroids. So it's a bit frustrating. It's a bit perplexing that we just do Band-Aid stuff still in veterinary medicine, when I feel like a lot of people are really learning that we're just fixing a symptom, not getting to the real root of the problem. And people are talking about this in many, many areas of life. So I think that's actually kind of good. It can be sort of annoying and frustrating, but we're learning in all parts of our lives, of our society. There's a lot of stuff out there that's not being done right. So that brings me to the good part of this topic. And that is, I believe that currently we are in the apocalypse. Now, when I was growing up, I thought apocalypse meant war, death, disease, famine, destruction, and everyone dies. It turns out that is not it. Apocalypse actually means the unveiling. And so you, my friend, and I have been chosen to live during the apocalypse. We are learning all this stuff, things that aren't right, like all these horse things, and then the whole world is bad or contaminated with toxins, or so many things are evil or upside down or just wrong. And they all kind of drive me crazy, but you got to pick what you're going to aim at. For example, it does drive me crazy that there's so much plastic in the ocean. But for me, what drives me even more crazy is what's going on with our horses. And so that's what I'm trying to do. I am trying to do my part to unveil the truth as best I know so that you can learn from it and then help your horse with it. Because if you go through all the horse studies, they tell us 50% is wrong, literally, but they never tell us what 50%, because I believe they don't know. And no offense to anyone, that's just how the system is set up. Okay. They don't know that all of our studies never started with healthy horses in the first place. So they're not really that useful. Do you see what I'm saying? And so, and then people hyper focus on certain areas, and it's not that we don't all know they're connected. The liver is talking to the gut system, and it's all one big holistic being that we're working on. It's just that we're taught in sections. We're taught about just dermatology in dermatology class. So it gets sectioned off in our brain. And it's hard to unlearn that and connect all the pieces. So that's what I'm here for, a little bit. But I wanted to tell you why this is all so wonderful and helpful. Besides, you are the one who's been chosen to be here during the time of the apocalypse. You can totally disagree with me. That's fine. But here's the cool part. After this apocalypse, which is the unveiling of all the bad stuff, then we get to fix it, and we are going to a specific part in time, which is beautiful. So I am going to read this part of the Bible, and it talks a lot about trees and seeds and blessings, because that's how the Bible talks. But blessings, they are for everything. They're for health. They're for our horses. So when it might say seeds or trees, it means all the good stuff. And then sin and unrighteousness, that means all the bad stuff. Okay? So you're in the apocalypse. You're learning all the bad stuff. It's painful. It's hard. But we're going someplace. Check this out. I think this is chapter 22, verse 18. And then the whole earth shall be tilled in righteousness, and shall all be planted with trees, and be full of blessing. And all desirable trees shall be planted on it, and they shall plant vines on it. And the vine which they plant shall yield wine in abundance. And as for the seed which is sown, each measure shall bear 1,000, and each measure of olives shall yield 10 presses of oil. And cleanse thou the earth. This is us, thou. That's us. That's me. That's you, thou. So here's what we're supposed to do. Thou cleanse the earth from all oppression, from all unrighteousness, and from all sin, and from all godlessness, and all the uncleanness that is wrought upon the earth, destroy it from the earth. And then all the children of men shall become righteous, and all nations shall offer adoration and shall praise me, that's God, and all shall worship God. And the earth shall be cleansed from all defilement and from all sin and all punishment and all torment. Never again will God send that upon them from generation to generation to forever. This is a promise, guys. We're really closing in on the end of time, which we just keep going on forever, which is pretty fun. I wonder if all the horses will keep going on forever. My point is, hang in there. We're in the apocalypse. We are learning all this stuff, and it is not any fun. And then we do our parts, whatever that might be, how small it seems. It really matters that you find your thing. First, help your horse, and then find your thing where you can help other people through the apocalypse, so we can get to this time when everything will be beautiful. I look forward to seeing you then. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.